A 40,000-pound explosive detonates underwater. The shockwave registers as a 3.9 magnitude earthquake on government sensors. 100 miles offshore, the USS Gerald R. Ford, all 100,000 tons of her, shakes violently as water erupts hundreds of feet into the air. This isn't an attack, it's a test. And it's just one of dozens of brutal trials every new aircraft carrier must survive before the Navy will accept it. What you're about to discover will change how you see these incredible warships forever. The testing process is so intense, so unforgiving, that even a $13 billion ship can fail. And when that happens, everything is on the line. Before any carrier earns the right to defend our nation, it faces trials that would destroy lesser vessels. These tests don't just check if systems work. They prove whether our sailors will come home alive. From underwater explosions to relentless inspections that last for months, nothing is left to chance. The process is designed to be cruel for one simple reason: war is crueler. And today, we're taking you inside every single phase of this extraordinary gauntlet. The United States Navy operates the most powerful aircraft carriers ever built. These floating fortresses carry over 5,000 sailors, 75 aircraft, and enough firepower to control entire regions. If you're proud of the dedication that goes into protecting our sailors, type "proud" in the comments below.
Yeah, it doesn't say anything about it, stop proud. It just all has to do with
Phase 1. Before the ship exists. Most people think testing begins when the carrier is built. They're wrong. It starts with a 30-foot scale model floating in what looks like the world's most sophisticated swimming pool. At the Naval Surface Warfare Center in Carderock, Maryland, engineers have created something extraordinary: a 12 million-gallon testing tank surrounded by 216 computer-controlled paddles. Each paddle can move independently, creating wave patterns that perfectly replicate any ocean condition on Earth. Hurricane-force storms in the North Atlantic, massive swells in the Pacific, even the confused seas created when multiple weather systems collide. The model carrier gets thrown into all of it. Engineers watch how it handles. Does it roll too much? Will waves crash over the flight deck? Can it maintain aircraft operations in rough seas? Every lesson learned here prevents problems that would cost billions to fix later. The model gets beaten up so the real ship won't be. This phase can take years. They test different hull designs, they adjust the shape of the bow, they determine how much ballast the ship needs and where to place it. By the time they settle on a final design, that little model has survived conditions that would terrify most sailors. Phase 2. Construction monitoring. Building an aircraft carrier takes over 7 years. During every single day of construction, Navy inspectors are watching. They're not just observers, they have the authority to stop work entirely if something isn't right. A weld that's slightly off spec gets redone. A component that doesn't meet exact specifications gets rejected. There's no good enough when you're building a ship that will defend America for 50 years. Newport News Shipbuilding in Virginia is the only place in America that builds carriers. The facility covers over 550 acres and employs thousands of skilled workers. But even with all that expertise, Navy inspectors find things to correct. That's their job. They represent the sailors who will eventually serve aboard this ship, and those sailors deserve perfection. The construction process is broken into modules. Massive sections of the ship get built separately, then lifted by crane and welded together. Each module undergoes inspection before installation. Once connected, the welds between modules get inspected again. X-rays reveal internal flaws invisible to the naked eye. Ultrasonic testing checks metal integrity. Pressure tests ensure compartments are watertight. This constant oversight costs money and slows construction. But it's saved lives. Modern carriers rarely have catastrophic failures because problems get caught during construction, not after. Phase 3. Dock trials. The ship is still tied to the pier, but now it's time to see if everything actually works together. Dock trials happen when construction is mostly complete and the crew has been assigned. This is where theory meets reality. Engineers power up the nuclear reactors for the first time. The carrier has two A-1B nuclear reactors that will run for over 20 years without refueling. Starting them is a carefully choreographed process that takes hours. Temperatures must rise slowly. Systems get checked at every stage. One mistake could cause damage that would delay the ship for months. With power available, they test everything. Radar systems spin up and track targets. The electromagnetic aircraft launch system, called EMALS, gets powered but not yet used to launch anything. Weapons elevators move ammunition from deep in the ship to the flight deck. Damage control systems activate. Communications equipment comes online. The crew practices damage control drills while still at the pier. They simulate fires, flooding, and equipment failures. Every sailor needs to know their emergency station and how to get there in the dark through smoke while the ship might be tilting. These drills are repetitive and exhausting. They're also the reason American carriers survive hits that would sink other vessels. Phase 4. Fast Cruise. Fast cruise sounds like it involves moving, but the ship stays tied to the dock. The name comes from the intensity. The crew operates as if they're at sea, even though they're not. This is the final rehearsal before the ship actually gets underway. For several days, the crew stands watches around the clock. They practice every procedure they'll need at sea. Navigation teams plot courses even though they're going nowhere. Engineering teams monitor the reactors as if they're powering the ship through rough water. The flight deck crew practices moving aircraft, even if they're just painted mock-ups at this stage. The purpose is simple: identify problems before they become emergencies at sea. If the crew struggles with a procedure at the pier, they'll be hopeless during a storm. If equipment fails during fast cruise, it gets fixed before it can endanger lives. This is also when the crew learns to work together. A carrier crew includes personnel from dozens of different specialties: pilots, engineers, cooks, mechanics, medical staff, administrators. They all have to function as one unit. Fast cruise is where that unity gets forged. Phase 5. Builders' Trials. Now the ship finally leaves the pier. Builders' Trials is the first time the carrier operates at sea, and it's a 7-day marathon of testing. The shipbuilder, Newport News Shipbuilding, runs these trials with the crew participating but not yet in full control. They test the propulsion system by running the ship through its full speed range. 2 nuclear reactors drive 4 bronze propellers, each 21 feet in diameter and weighing 66,000 pounds. The ship can exceed 30 knots, but the exact top speed is classified. During builders' trials, they push it to the limit to ensure it performs as designed. The dual-band radar gets its first real workout. This system can track hundreds of aircraft simultaneously at various ranges. During builders' trials, they use it to track actual aircraft in the area, verifying that it can distinguish between friendly planes, commercial traffic, and potential threats. The electromagnetic aircraft launch system conducts no-load cycles. They're not launching actual planes yet, but they're running the catapults through complete sequences to ensure everything functions correctly. Each catapult uses electromagnetic fields instead of steam to launch aircraft. The system can precisely control how much energy gets applied, which reduces stress on airframes and allows launching heavier aircraft. Throughout builders' trials, hundreds of systems undergo evaluation. The crew identifies deficiencies, items that need correction or adjustment. This is expected and normal. The shipbuilder documents every issue and begins planning repairs. Before we dive deeper, please take a second to like this video and subscribe. Over 98% of viewers watch without subscribing. It costs you nothing but makes a huge difference to us. Phase 6. Acceptance Trials. This is where the Navy takes over. The Board of Inspection and Survey, INSERV, arrives with a reputation for being absolutely uncompromising. Their job is to determine whether the ship meets contract specifications and is ready for naval service. They answer to Congress and the American taxpayers who funded this $13 billion investment. Before going to sea, INSERV conducts over 200 pierside demonstrations and inspections. They crawl through every compartment. They verify that safety equipment is properly installed and accessible. They check that damage control gear is where it should be and that the crew knows how to use it. They test communication systems, verify that weapons elevators work correctly, and ensure that aircraft firefighting equipment functions properly. Then comes the 3-day at sea portion. The carrier performs over 500 demonstrations while in-serve inspectors watch everything. The crew operates under intense scrutiny. They demonstrate damage control procedures, navigate through various courses, communicate with other vessels and aircraft, operate radar and weapon systems, and prove they can handle emergencies. In-serve inspectors take notes on everything. They identify deficiencies in 3 categories: critical items that must be fixed before the ship can be accepted, major items that need correction soon, and minor items that can wait but still need addressing. At the end of acceptance trials, InServ provides a detailed report. If there are too many critical deficiencies, the Navy can refuse to accept the ship until they're corrected. Once the ship passes, the Navy officially accepts delivery. The carrier is now a commissioned vessel of the United States Navy, but the testing isn't over. Phase 7. Post-delivery tests and trials. The Navy now owns the ship, but before it can deploy, it must complete post-delivery tests and trials. This phase lasts approximately 18 months and is perhaps the most intensive period of all. First comes flight deck certification. Until now, no actual aircraft have launched from or landed on this carrier. That changes during this phase. Pilots conduct carrier qualifications, landings and takeoffs to maintain their certifications. They start with helicopters, which are more forgiving. Then come the jets. Watching an FA-18 Super Hornet land on a carrier is incredible. The aircraft approaches at 150 miles per hour, catches an arresting wire with its tail hook, and stops in less than 350 feet. The deceleration is so violent it feels like hitting a wall, and they do this at night, in bad weather, with a pitching deck. The crew practices this hundreds of times. They learn to launch aircraft every 45 seconds during intense operations. They learn to recover aircraft even faster during emergencies. They practice refueling operations, moving aircraft between the hangar bay and flight deck, and performing repairs in conditions that would shut down most facilities. Then comes combat systems qualification trials. This is where the carrier proves it can defend itself. The crew uses the ship's weapon systems to destroy actual targets. They fire RIM-116 rolling airframe missiles at rocket-propelled drones flying at over 600 miles per hour. They use Sea Sparrow missiles against other targets. The Phalanx close-in weapon system, a rapid-fire cannon designed as the last line of defense, gets tested against high-speed maneuvering surface targets. These aren't simulations. They're firing live weapons at actual threats to prove the systems work under pressure. Phase 8. The shock trials. Now we reach the most brutal test of all. Full ship shock trials are designed to answer one question. Can this carrier continue fighting after an underwater explosion? The only way to find out is to actually explode things next to it. The USS Gerald R. Ford underwent shock trials in the summer of 2021. It was the first carrier to face this test since the USS Theodore Roosevelt in 1987, a gap of 34 years. Congress mandated these trials after concerns about the Ford's many new technologies. The Navy detonated 3 separate charges, each weighing 40,000 pounds. Let that sink in. 40,000 pounds of explosives. That's equivalent to 20 tons of high explosive. The blasts occurred off the coast of Florida, far from land but close enough that the U.S. Geological Survey registered them as earthquakes. The first explosion happened about 100 miles offshore. Even at that distance, the blast registered as a 3.9 magnitude earthquake. Water erupted hundreds of feet into the air. The shock wave traveled through the ocean and slammed into the carrier's hull with devastating force. Inside the ship, sailors braced themselves as equipment rattled and shook. The entire 100,000-ton vessel moved from the force of the explosion, and this was just the first test. The second and third explosions were set progressively closer to the ship. Each one tested the carrier's ability to absorb damage and continue operating. The crew didn't just sit there waiting, they actively operated the ship throughout the trials. After each explosion, they checked systems, reported damage, and proved they could continue mission-critical operations. The carrier was wired with thousands of sensors specifically for these trials. These sensors measured how much the ship moved, how systems responded to shock, and where stress concentrated. Engineers monitored everything in real time, gathering data that will improve the design of future carriers. The trials included testing the dual-band radar immediately after explosions. Could it still track aircraft? Yes, they tested the propulsion system. Could the ship still maneuver? Yes, they tested weapons systems, communications, and damage control equipment. Everything had to work after the shocks, or the ship would fail its trials. Captain Paul Lanzalotta, the Ford's commanding officer, reported 0 catastrophic failures, 0 fires, and 0 flooding. Some subsystems broke, that was expected, but nothing critical failed. The ship proved it could take a beating and keep fighting. Why conduct such extreme tests? Because modern warfare involves weapons designed specifically to exploit weaknesses. Anti-ship missiles hit with tremendous force. Torpedoes explode beneath the hull where damage is maximized. Mines detonate in shipping lanes. If a carrier can't survive these threats, it can't protect our sailors or Project American Power when needed most. The Navy expected some damage from shock trials. That's part of the test. Identify what breaks so engineers can reinforce it for future ships. Only about 5% of the work during the carrier's next maintenance period was related to shock trial damage. The rest was modernization and planned upgrades. Phase 9. Planned incremental availability. After shock trials, the carrier enters a 6-month maintenance period called planned incremental availability. This isn't a break. It's the final preparation phase before deployment. The crew doesn't just fix what broke during shock trials. They complete modernization work that prepares the ship for high-end combat operations. Newport News Shipbuilding performs most of the work, but the crew stays actively involved. They learn the ship's systems at a deeper level. They identify potential problems before they become emergencies. They complete training that will keep them and their shipmates alive. This is also when final computer system upgrades get installed. Modern carriers run on networks more complex than most cities. These systems manage everything from weapons targeting to food inventory. They must be secure against cyber attacks, reliable under combat stress, and intuitive enough that sailors can use them effectively during emergencies. Phase 10. Integrated training. Now the carrier must prove it can work with other ships and aircraft as part of a strike group. A carrier strike group typically includes the carrier, 2 guided missile cruisers, 2 guided missile destroyers, and 1 or 2 attack submarines. Together, they form one of the most powerful military forces ever assembled. Integrated training brings all these elements together. The ships practice coordinated defense. If one detects an incoming threat, all the others must respond instantly. They practice complex maneuvers, maintaining formation even while traveling at high speed. They conduct anti-submarine warfare operations, tracking submarines while avoiding counter-detection. The air wing joins the training. The carrier typically operates about 75 aircraft, FA-18 Super Hornets for strike missions, EA-18G Growlers for electronic warfare, E-2 Hawkeyes for airborne early warning, and MH-60 helicopters for various missions. Coordinating all these aircraft requires split-second timing and perfect communication. Training scenarios get progressively harder. They simulate multi-axis attacks, where threats come from air, surface, and subsurface simultaneously. They practice while dealing with equipment casualties. Can they still defend themselves if a radar fails? They train at night and in bad weather because enemies don't wait for perfect conditions. Phase 11. Final evaluation. Before deployment, the strike group faces one final test, a comprehensive evaluation by outside assessors. These experts come from the Navy's training command and have decades of combined experience. They've seen every mistake possible and know exactly what to look for. The evaluation lasts several weeks and covers every possible scenario. They simulate coordinated attacks by multiple enemy forces. They create communication failures, equipment breakdowns, and casualties among key personnel. They push the crew to their limits to see how they respond under maximum stress. The assessors are looking for specific things. Can the crew adapt when plans fall apart? Do they follow procedures even under pressure? Can junior personnel step up if senior leaders become casualties? Will they make smart decisions when there's no time to consult higher authority? This evaluation determines whether the carrier and its strike group can deploy. If they fail, they train more and test again. The stakes are too high to accept anything less than excellence. Why the testing matters. Some people question why testing takes so long and costs so much. The answer is simple. We're talking about 5,000 American sailors who will live aboard this ship for months at a time, often in dangerous waters far from home. Every one of them deserves to know their ship has been tested to destruction and rebuilt stronger. The Ford-class carriers cost about $13 billion each, but spread over a 50-year service life, during which the carrier will project American power across the globe, protect freedom of navigation, and deter conflicts, that cost looks different. These ships are designed to survive conditions that would sink almost any other vessel afloat. The testing proves that design works. When potential enemies see American carriers surviving tests that would obliterate their ships, they think twice about starting conflicts. The testing itself becomes a form of deterrence. Throughout all this testing, we should never forget the sailors who make it possible. They spend months away from families, working impossible hours in challenging conditions. They volunteered to serve, endured brutal training, and accepted assignments that would terrify most people. The testing process respects these sailors by ensuring their ship won't fail them. Conclusion. From scale models and test tanks to underwater explosions that register as earthquakes, the testing process for new aircraft carriers is the most comprehensive in the world. Every test is designed to find weaknesses before enemies can exploit them. Every trial pushes the ship beyond normal operating limits. Every inspection demands perfection because our sailors' lives depend on it. The process seems cruel because it is, deliberately so. But that's not cruelty. That's commitment to excellence. That's respect for the sailors who serve. That's the American way. If you found this fascinating, hit that like button and subscribe. Let us know in the comments, what impressed you most about this testing process?